Let's talk fair market rental rates. We are going to start by looking at a host of cities here, and we're going to look at from 2000 to 2015 the absolute and relative change for each of these. So Fort Wayne, remember absolute is new minus old, and relative is new minus old divided by old. So if we start with absolute, here's Fort Wayne, new minus old, we get an absolute change of 179. Now, relative change is the same thing, right? New minus old, so we have 179 over the old value, which is 508, leading to a roughly a 35% relative change. So from 2000 to 2015, the fair market rental rates in Fort Wayne increased by $179, which was roughly 35%. For Gary, well, let's look at Gary. Okay, so for absolute, new minus old, so that gives us 167. And then we take our new minus old divided by old, and we get 26%. And I'm rounding to the nearest percent for these. Let's look at Indianapolis, and let's go ahead and write sentences for those. So for the absolute, we take 792 minus 552, and that gives us 240. So as a sentence, fair market rental rates increased $240 from 2000 to 2015 in Indy, right? And then we go relative change, which is new minus old, 240, divided by old, 552, which is roughly 43%. And so we could say fair market rental rates increased 43% from 2000 to 2015 in Indy. So notice how when you're doing your sentence, you really can just switch out a little bit dealing with absolute relative change. Bloomington, here's Bloomington. New minus old gives you absolute change. New minus old, which is the absolute change divided by old, gives us the relative change of 29%. Now, that's not too bad if we're talking about years, but sometimes we don't talk about years, we just talk about places. So if we're talking about finding the absolute relative change from Indianapolis to Terre Haute, now think about when you move. If you're going from Indianapolis, that's old, to Terre Haute, that's new. Okay, so we're going to talk about, and we're going to write sentences for each one of these. So the new value, and we're going to use 2015 values, so we're only dealing with these. So Terre Haute is new, 678. Indianapolis is old, and that's 792. So my absolute change is negative $114. Right? So that means the fair market rental rates in Terre Haute are $114 less than in Indy in 2015. All right, if we're going to stick with years there. Now, if I want to find the relative change, I take my absolute change, new minus old, right? So these things, over the old, which is 792, and that leaves me with roughly negative 14.4%. So my sentence, fair market rental rates in Terre Haute are 14.4% less than in Indy in 2015. Now let's go from Bloomington to South Bend, and we're just going to find the values. We're not going to write sentences. Okay, so South Bend is new because that's where we're going to. From Bloomington is old. So South Bend and Bloomington. So South Bend, 763 minus 823. So therefore, my absolute is negative 60. My relative takes my absolute change and divides by the old value for a difference of a negative 7.3%. From Evansville, old, to Kokomo, new. So we're dealing with Kokomo and Evansville. So Kokomo is new, Evansville is old, so we're at negative $17. Negative 17 over the old value gives me a negative 2.4%. Now we're going to write a sentence comparing South Bend to Bloomington using absolute and relative change. So South Bend and Bloomington are here, and if I'm going, I usually say if I'm going to somewhere, I make that new. So I would take 823 minus 763. My absolute is 60, and then 60 divided by 763 gives me a relative change of 7.9%. So Bloomington is $60 or 7.9% higher than South Bend in 2015. Oh, I should have said fair market rental rates in Bloomington is $60 or 7.9% higher than South Bend in 2015. Let's compare Kokomo to Evansville. So Kokomo is old, Evansville is new. There's Evansville, there's Kokomo. So new minus old, 17. 17 divided by old gives me a 2.4%, rounded to the nearest tenth. So Evansville, fair market rental rates are $17 or 2.4% higher than Kokomo in 2015. And that's it.